like this number. Don't you know he's listening? The 13. He's here.
You have entered the 13, a place where real stories about music, touring, and the beyond are told. Music does something to us. We all experience it in our own way. It can affect our senses, transport us through time, and release emotions. On this podcast, we will talk with people about the power of music and the beyond. What does the beyond mean? Let's find out together. Turn on your metronomes because this time is about to be tracked.
Welcome to the 13. Why do I gotta say it like that? I don't know. It's kind of fun though. Anyway, guys, today on the show we have Mark Olly. This episode was filmed a couple months ago. It's so much fun. Mark's a musician, an archaeologist, an author, and he's hosted a few TV shows. He's on Ancient Aliens. Dude, I mean, come on. This dude is awesome. And he's such a nice person and so fun to talk to. I mean, I don't even know why I'm trying to explain it to you. Let's get into the episode. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the 13. I'm your host, Ryan 13. And on today's show, we have archaeologist, author, TV show guru, musician, Mark Olly. Mark, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure you have way more you could add to that list than just what I said, but
that's enough. That's more than enough. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. So
yeah.
You are in a band called Copperworm, who I follow.
I am indeed. I'm indeed.
And what I think you guys you finally just got some physical discs, didn't you?
We did. There it is.
There it is.
That's it. It's available on Bandcamp, so you can order it from Bandcamp, or you can just download it if you want to be a Philistine and you don't want the artwork. Then
no, that's my favorite. That's my favorite part is like actually getting the physical album, whether it's a CD, a vinyl, or whatever. It's always been my favorite part because there's something tangible. You have it in your hand. You get to read who the artists thanked. Like what they use, what guitars they used, or what drums they used. That's my favorite part.
Who did what, where, when, and how? Yes.
Yeah, I love
that's
all
stuff in there.
Dude, I love it. That's great. How many tracks are on it?
I think there's 11. Let me just have a look. Yes, there's 11 on it. We recorded 15, but out of those there was something wrong with a couple of them, according to the guy who's in charge of the band. So we've put out the best 11, and they are the best. There's no doubt about it.
Awesome. Are you guys doing any touring, or are you just doing weekenders, or?
Well, there's a few interesting things that have happened actually. Up to a point, we were working solely on the album. So all of last year, all of going through this year, we worked solely on touring last year and the album this year. So we got to that point. But then there's only 3 of us in the band. And as you said in the introduction, I've got a television career. I've also got, a writing career. I do all these other things. And one of the other members of the band, who shall remain nameless, also has a very high pressure job. Okay. So what we've actually done is we're looking at restructuring the band, because the guy that plays bass now wants to play guitar. The guy who sings, who plays guitar, doesn't want to play guitar. He wants to sing. I'm getting so busy, it's getting difficult to tour and to gig and things like that. And I'm in another band as well, a band called Wolf. So they're looking at possibly trying to find another rhythm section, a bass player and a drummer, because at the end of the day, we're all session players. Effectively, we've been doing this for years. So I don't know where that's going to go. It's all new. It's all just happening. You're getting the news as it happens.
Okay.
I've got a gig with my other band coming up in 5 weeks' time, because we're all very old. We've all reached 60 in the same year, because we formed in the same high school year. So we're doing this. The band's called Wolf, and it's called Wolf at 240, because that's the total age of the 4 members of that band. So I'm not stopping playing. I'm just trying to make better use of my time. Because there's an awful lot going on at the moment. So, and to be honest with you, I mean, we generally speaking, we gig and we tour in this country in the autumn. So things don't start to pick up till August, September anyway. So I'm just looking forward to doing loads of stuff over the summer, and then we'll see where we stand sort of later in the year. But musically, it's a brilliant album, absolutely brilliant. Recorded the same way as Zeppelin did Zeppelin 1. They did Zeppelin 1 over 36 hours. They essentially did it live and then produced it afterwards. And that's exactly what we've done. We did this in 36 hours. We've gone back to it and produced it and sort of mixed it at a later date. And it's got that same kind of feeling, which I'm quite pleased about because I'm an enormous fan of Zeppelin. So,
Oh yeah, me too.
you know,
Well, that's great. I think that's great because you capture that feeling,
oh, you do.
Just that thing that's happening when you're grooving, when you're jamming, when that thing's happening that you don't always get when you go track by track by track,
No. I mean, I did the majority of the production as well, so I can honestly tell you that what you hear is what we played. There's no fancy tricks. We've not compressed it to within an inch of its life. We've not sucked all the energy out of it. All the little drag notes on the snare drum and all the little fiddly noises that you get off the strings, and his voice is not. Well, you can tell when you hear it, it's not been, retuned or anything like that. So it is what you hear is what you get. It's what we sound like, which I think is it's a bold move. It's a brave move for the 21st century. Most people just rely on technology.
So there's this band King's X that I used to work for, and they just recorded a new album and they did it all analog. So, I mean, of course, everything has to go digital at the end. But like they recorded everything in the room, and a lot of their fans were like, I don't know if I like this. And I'm listening to it going, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard because it sounds real.
Yeah. And, well, this is analog as well. Yeah.
See, and that's why that's why I love it. I love that because you're getting the real sound, but everyone's so used to hearing, like you said, compressed within an inch of its life. It's been digitized. People are using auto tune. When Metallica came out with Death Magnetic in 2008, they made that album. They squished it so you could hear it in your headphones, which was fine. It sounded great in your earbuds, but when you put it on the car, you're like, I don't know about this.
Yeah. No, this is one of those albums where you've got to have your CD player or you've got to have your digital source connected to real speakers. So when you crank the volume up, it moves the air. Get the bass hitting you in the middle of the chest.
I love it.
It's got that bass drum effect there that you'll feel it in your heart if you turn it up. So it's a proper album. It's what you and I would call a proper album.
Oh, I can't wait to check it out. I went and saw, speaking of bass moving the hair on your arms, I went and saw a band called Stabbing Westward the other day, like literally not last weekend, but the weekend before. And they had a bass drop. The drummer had a bass drop, attached. And it was the deepest one I've ever heard or felt. And maybe the club was so small, but like literally my hair like blew back every time he hit it. It was fantastic. It was a cool experience.
You've got to be careful because in the early days when they tried doing things like that, I remember it at festivals. If you went below a certain dB and you were a little bit too close to the bass speakers, it caused a bowel movement.
Yeah, right.
So, the first 20 or 30 rows all went all at the same time. And it was not good.
Dude, that's fantastic. Yeah,
I think it might have been Motorhead that found that out actually from experience thinking about it. But yeah.
I saw Motorhead one time live, and I went with the lead singer of King's X, Doug Pinnick, took me. We show up to the gig. I've been to plenty of shows with this guy. He hands me a pair of earplugs. I'm like, what are these for? He goes, you're gonna need them.
Oh yeah.
And I needed them. I couldn't hear. Motorhead was so loud. Well, there's Lemmy in the background.
Motorhead
was so loud, I couldn't hear him until I put
everything louder than everything else. That's the principle. I mean, a mate of mine's a sound engineer, and he did front of house for them, and he had to pack it in. He could only stand it for so long as he was going deaf.
Yeah,
and that's through ear defenders as well. They're just so loud. It was affecting his hearing.
They brought in they played a place called the Engine Room that's no longer here in Houston, but the PA wasn't enough for them. The one that was and it was a huge PA. They brought in like $15,000 worth of PA. They rented it from some local place.
Yeah. Well, I played a couple of gigs where we've ended up using two of the bass cabs as the drum riser. So I'll give you some idea of how big things have been. And then I can feel it. Then I don't need the bass in the monitoring. I can feel it coming through.
Or like the Ampegs, like the one behind me.
No, you're talking about proper big, like outdoor PA. The fluted ones that are rectangular, and they have like casters on the back, so you have to tip them up and roll them, and you can sit in them and play, speaker racing down the ramps in them if you want to,
Right.
if you're feeling so
Oh my
inclined.
gosh.
But we had two of those. I mean, they're about, I don't know, 7 foot long by about 3 or 4 foot deep, and we had
Wow.
two, and I was sat on top of those, which, funnily enough, was a band back in the 1970s and 80s with the guitarist who's in Copperworm. So, you know,
Okay.
we
Right
go
on.
back a long way.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. This is so cool. I'm so glad
Oh,
you came on. So everybody who's listening, Mark and me have met a couple of times through my buddy Brandon Thomas over on Expanding Reality.
yeah.
You've been a guest over at Expanding Reality quite a few times.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I was listening to some of them yesterday. I'd already heard the one about the crystal skulls, but I wanted to re-listen to it because we were going to talk today. So, man, there's some
Yeah.
fascinating stuff going on in your books. So let's get to your books. You got a new one,
Okay.
and the new one is called, and I've heard everybody mispronounce it so much that I'm
Ah,
afraid I'm going
ah.
to mispronounce it. But I've heard
Go
you say
on.
it.
You can do it. You can do
I
it.
know
Go
it.
on.
The Polychronicon of Merlin,
Yes.
Joseph, and Arthur.
That's it. Yes.
I've
Yes.
heard you say it, so I was like, okay, Ryan, just don't mess that one up.
Yeah. It's one of those English language things where you break it into three. It's poly, chrony, con. It's dead easy when you do it that way.
It
Really,
actually,
honestly.
it. I mean, when I read it, I said it out loud the way that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
said, the way that it's supposed to be said. But then
Yeah.
after I heard people mispronounce it, I got kind of worried.
Well, it is a medieval term. All it means at the end of the day, it means a chronological history. It just means whatever
Yeah,
history's in the book, it's running in chronological order. It's written diary style, diary fashion. You'll be referring to that one.
there
There
it
it
is.
is. Polychronicon, Merlin, Joseph, and Arthur. I think you can see that.
Yeah, it looks great.
Uh,
How
well,
thick is
this
that
is a
thing?
hardback, so it's
Yeah,
actually slightly bigger than the one I normally hold up.
and
But
can you get that one
that's
on Amazon too?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what we've been saying to people, actually, the publisher will probably shoot me for this, but we don't make as much money on the hardbacks as we do on the paperbacks.
Okay,
But, and this is the but, if you want to buy this as a gift to someone, the hardback is the sexiest book you've ever seen.
nice.
You've got to get it in hardback. It's only about a fiver difference in English currency. It's about 25 quid, I think, with delivery when it's paperback, but it's 30 when it's hardback. So
Yeah,
it's negligible. It's worth it. It's worth doing the hardback if you
absolutely.
can. And also there's a little bit of space top and bottom for notes. So if you
Oh,
wanted
cool.
to, develop it and use it as a working thing, but it's just great. Yeah, that's the publisher wasn't sure about putting King Arthur out because Philip Mantle's Flying Disc Press, so it's all
Right,
flying saucers and UFOs.
right.
I was like, I'm not so sure about this. But eventually we all kind of ganged up on him and talked him into having a go. And he's done it. And I remember the day that he got his sample copy and he sent me an email. He just went, oh, this is the sexiest book I've ever seen. He said, this is brilliant. He said, it's the best one I've ever produced. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I think he's converted now. He doesn't very often get excited, by the way. That's totally uncommon for him, So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
That's
So
cool. So what?
he loves it.
That's
Go.
great. I was listening to other podcasts, so I'm definitely going to rip off some other podcasts here and ask some of the same
Yeah.
questions because they were great. But like one of the ones I was listening to yesterday was talking about Merlin, and it's a title, not
It is indeed. Yeah.
not it's a person, but it's a title of a person,
Yeah.
there's not one Merlin.
It's not one person. If you study the Welsh Arthurian material, you discover that the first Merlin is Merlin Taliesin. Now, a lot of people know about the poet Taliesin. He's internationally famous as a Welsh poet, but he's given the title Merlin. He's alive in the early 400s. Then you get another one, Merlin Ambrosius. Well, Merlin Ambrosius then is obviously the next most prominent kind of religious, political, military, whatever leader to follow on from the first Merlin. Then Merlin Ambrosius is actually the elder brother of Uther Pendragon. So Arthur's dad's brother, if you like, Arthur's uncle, is one of the Merlins. The next Merlin then is a guy called Merlin Le Logan, which means dear friend or little friend in Welsh. And he's the guy who you always see as the old man with the beard, because he lives right through Arthur's life, right up to Arthur going to war. And he's about 102, 103 when he dies. So he's the one that everybody associates as being, Merlin the magician or whatever.
Yeah.
But then he makes it through to the Battle of Baden, where, Arthur's victorious, and he thinks, right, that's it, we've sorted it, we've brought back Roman Britain, and then he dies, and then there's another Merlin. You get Merlin Willet, Merlin the Mad, And Merlin the Mad goes mad because he sees the decline of Arthur, and he sees Arthur getting, killed at the Battle of Camelot, and then he lives on into his 80s, this second Merlin, and sees actually that the Welsh take up arms against each other, turns into a civil war, and they lose to the Saxons. And then the very last Merlin is Merlin Tortugan. He's up in Cumbria, and he's heading towards 600 AD. And there's this one guy in Cumbria, then there might just be like another one up in Scotland or another one in Ireland. That's it. Round about 600, the title dies out because of the Saxons. So you got kind of 200 years with about 3 or 4 Merlins per every 100 years, which is about right. But they're all listed in the book, with source material. Cool. But yeah, there's more than one of them. It's a title.
I'd never ever thought about that. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it totally makes sense. I was talking to my wife about it last night. I brought it up to my wife, and we were like making dinner, and she like just stopped and looked at me. She was like, "It's a title." I was like, "Yeah, there's more than one." She's like, "What?"
Yeah. Oh, you've got to get the book. I mean, if you like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much stuff in there. I think the reason the publishers have hesitated to put it out, because it's taken a long time, it took about 6 years to get it into print, is that it has got a lot of extremely radical stuff in it that's kind of, it changes things. It keeps some of the tradition, but it changes the way that things are. And that made a lot of publishers hesitate, One guy actually said, "Oh, it's more than my career's worth to publish this." But he was based in London, and he was all into his Glastonbury and his Tintagel Castle and all that nonsense. And that's all fake. I mean, I pretty well do away with that in the first few pages of the book, and then you get stuck into the real gritty stuff. And that's what people want, I think.
I think you're right. I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing about the tone of a lot of your books. I've been listening to the way people talk about it and the way that you talk about it. So like in the Crystal Skulls and Human Heads one, like you say something very similar, like, well, pretty much in the beginning, I dismiss all this stuff, and you find out right away that
I think it's evolution in that case.
Evolution,
I sort that one out fairly quickly.
Yeah, you get rid of that right quick. No more bye Darwin.
Yeah, sink the Big Bang, sink evolution, get rid of all the nonsense, all the stuff that they put out there that's rubbish, and then get into the real mysteries, get stuck into the nitty gritty. Because I mean, what I've discovered with all the books I've written is that the truth is better. It's always better than whatever fantasy or fiction or theory or other ideas are bolted on. I mean, the truth just rocks absolutely when you get into it, and it makes sense. The idea of, for example, a woodpecker evolving, so some bird climbs up a tree and goes, and, it's dead. It's dead immediately because it's just hit the tree at 160 miles an hour and its brain's gone, no opportunity to evolve. It's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And you've got so many examples. There's thousands of examples like that, where that theory doesn't work. I mean, Darwin didn't say evolution. He actually called it the theory of modification, the idea that species adapt to their environment, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. Of course, things change to accommodate their environment, but you don't have like a monkey turning into a bloke. DNA has sunk that completely. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
Dude, that's awesome. So when I was sitting there on a couple of our shows that we've done with Brandon, I was sitting there like, why does Mark look so familiar to me? He sounds familiar to me. I couldn't figure it out. And then yesterday on my way home, while I was researching for this, I saw on YouTube Lost Treasures, and I know for a fact I've seen that on the internet like over the last 10, 15 years, plenty of times. I was like, holy crap, that's where I know him from, so that, and that was a great show.
Yeah, we did it for ITV Granada over here, which is a sort of regional TV. We did really good. We did 22 episodes over 5 years, and then we did a couple of specials for Sky. And Sky History Channel said, "Oh, go on, then we'll take a couple of the series." So series 1 and series 2, they took those two, and they got broadcast all over the world. They went everywhere. So it went from this tiny little regional Northwest Britain show. It just suddenly went boom, and it was fabulous. It was great. We got Nightwish doing the theme tune, which was a major coup. It came off the album Once, which is their best album. Actually, there's a little story there as well, going back to the music business, because we liked the album. We really love the album. We said, we want to use a couple of the tracks off it. Can you send us an instrumental version? So we got this, disc ripped from the master that came in the post, silver CD with nothing on it at all. And then we use that on the series and all the rest of it. Next minute, by the time the series is over, they've actually put the album out as an instrumental album.
Oh,
So
wow.
they must have seen the same thing that we saw. They listened to the musical content and thought, "Now this is good enough on its own. Let's just put the music out." So it became a limited edition instrumental release, and they've done that a few times with a few of the different albums. But I think we started it because we needed a version for the titles and a version behind the series.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So that you will have seen me before.
Brandon. Yeah. So after that, I called Brandon immediately, and I said, "Brandon, check this out. Look this up." And he's like, he looks it up, and he goes, "Dude, listen to that." But one of the things was he's like, "Listen to that music." I was like, "Yeah."
Oh yeah. It was. It was very cutting edge. A lot of archaeologists now on TV shows, if you see them, I think it's the ladies as well do it quite a lot now. They're dressed in black and they dye their hair like Goths, and they have piercing and tats and all this, that, and the other. Well, up to the point where we did Lost Treasures, it was all very BBC. They all look like David Attenborough, going out for tea and scones on a Sunday afternoon. That was kind of the way that they all did it. They all had white hair and stripy jumpers. And we just blew that out of the water completely because I designed the Man in Black costume, which for all the world looks like Odin. He's got a big black hat and it's dark glasses and black coat to the floor, and it became a real thing. We had 3 different costumes designed for each one for each series.
Awesome.
And that just changed everything. I mean, we did so much. The first animation as well, of where you have somebody, a real person, walking into an old photograph, and the old photograph starts to move. All that kind of trickery was cutting edge. We did all that back then. We rebuilt the entire of Roman Chester and had a fly through going on computer, and it was basically what we said was we know it's a regional story, history show, but let's approach it like a movie. Big costumes, big sets, big set pieces, battles, and all the stuff when you're a kid, when you're reading history books and you think, oh, I wish I'd been there to see these cannons or pirates or whatever else. So we put that in the series, and it does run like a movie.
Oh, dude, they're fantastic. And like I loved the outfit, like all the way down to the boots.
New rocks. Yeah, we had new rocks. I think it was series 3. I actually changed to biker boots because we couldn't get new rocks in red. We needed them in red and black. And then blow me, a couple of years after we'd finished filming, they brought out new rocks in red and black.
Of course.
So we're like,
when I was in where was I? I was in London. So they went down to Camden Market or whatever, and that's where like all the Goths were. And this is 2009, but like all the Goths were out there, and you go and walked into a store and they had all my favorite boots, but I couldn't afford a single one of them, a pair of them. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, they were. I mean, season 2, the big ones that I wear in season 2, they were only made for 6 months, and they cost a lot of money. But when it's a television company paying for them, who cares? Who cares? On the go, It was a great series as well for engaging people when you mentioned Goths and what have you, because we used to get emails. People used to email us, and you'd get the usual collection of local history buffs emailing in going, fantastic, you've covered this, you covered that. And then I got this other weird email coming in from a housing estate somewhere up further up north. And apparently all the teenagers, the Goths, were getting together when the show was being broadcast to watch the show. They were just teenagers, we'd hit that kind of age bracket without realizing that that's what it was going to do. So we engaged a whole generation of teenagers as well. There's some archaeologists out there now digging in this country who were inspired by that program back in 2005, 2007, 2008,
Man, that's awesome. And
makes me feel old.
That's like, this is the type, those are, that show and shows like it are the type of shows that I've just always gravitated towards. I love stuff like that. So anytime, you had me, with the intro, I was like, okay, what's going on? I can't wait
straight away. Boom. Yeah.
And,
it's come, I was going to say it's come full circle because, the last time that was shown, I think was 2010 or 2011.
Okay.
But this year now, I'm on season 19 of Ancient Aliens.
I was just about to bring that up, man.
Yeah, there you go.
So
It's
cool.
seamlessly we flow into that. So it's
That's
come
right.
full circle now. I'm now the old professor with the jacket on, and I'm sort of the respectable side of archaeology, and I'm on that. It's quite funny because Giorgio's there going, well, I'm not saying it's aliens, but
Right.
it could be, or it
Right.
is aliens or whatever. And I'm sat there going, I'm not saying it's aliens, but actually I don't think it is. I think it's us. So it's like that kind of, they like that tension in a program. So it'd be nice. It'd be nice to do a few more. It was loads of fun.
Yeah, I hope so. I can't wait to see the ones you've done. When is season 19 already out, or is it coming out? Or
Well, I've noticed if you stick strictly to the broadcaster that Sky, the one that actually commissions it, it's on Sky now, so it's not devolved to any other channels.
okay.
I'm on the one for obelisks, I'm on the one for crop circles, I'm on the one for cosmic impacts, and then I think I'm on another one, but I can't remember what the other one was. So I think I'm on 4 out of however many they've done, because they never tell you exactly how many they're going to do. They just do whatever they've got.
Yeah.
But it's not gone on to repeats yet, so I've not seen it on the History Channel, I've not seen it on Blaze, I've not seen it on Quest or any of the other channels yet, but it'll devolve. I mean, over here, I think we're still on season 17 over here, so
Yeah.
we're playing catch up.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm definitely on them.
Okay, cool. I can't wait to go check that out. The one of the things I was going to say was Doug from King's X again. He met Giorgio once in LA, and he just said he was just the super nice guy and super fascinating, and
oh yeah,
like had really cool hair, and
well, it was funny because I was doing a conference over here at Blackpool, this Awakening Expo, and it was Giorgio and Eric were sort of 2 of the feature speakers, and it actually came about because I was sat next to Eric. So you can imagine you're sort of backstage, as it were, and you're stuffing your face with butties, from the buffet at half time.
Yeah.
And by default, I ended up sitting next to Eric. Now, everybody knew that I was an archaeologist, and everybody knows what Eric's all about. So I'm sure somebody did it on purpose to see what would happen. So I thought, well, I'm gonna have to break the ice here somewhere. So I kind of leaned over to Eric, and I just said to Eric, I said, my dad inspired me. I said, to go out and do archaeology, and I said he had your book, Chariot of the Gods, on his bookshelf. And I said, we all read it when we were training in archaeology. And, we don't always necessarily agree with everything that's in it. I said, but you got us all to look at things a different way. Yeah. I said, the main thrust of that book got us all to question things. Right. Anyway, Eric puts his sandwich down and he looks at me and he just goes, there are 267 question marks in that book. And then he went back to eating his sandwich again. And that was it. I thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
That's all he needed to say.
We're on the same page. We're on exactly the same page. So that's all he's doing it for. He's just trying to get people to think. So that's brilliant. Awesome. Absolutely. What a guy. And then, of course, I got chatting to Giorgio and his partner. And he said, well, yeah, we've got a lot in common here. It'd be nice to get you on the show, sort of thing. But I am the odd one out. I mean, there's all the, Graham Phillips, Andrew Collins, all the big, massive authors that have really put out, huge amounts of books over a long period of time. And there's little old me. I'm just the archaeologist. Yeah, I'm just the archaeologist.
But how many books do you have out now? Like,
well, with the one that's coming up, there's one coming up in August, which is the Europe's Roswell book. That will make 9.
Nice.
But you've got to bear in mind that the Arthur one took 40 odd years to write. So, I don't put out fast output. I do an average of about a book every 2 or 3 years. I only started in the 1990s. But in the gap, if you like, there's also 6 DVDs plus an entire TV series.
Right.
So, and anything else that I put out in terms of musical output, and producing stuff, because I'm credited as producer on quite a few albums. There's about 5 or 6 albums that I do producer on. So, it's just, there's a lot of output. It's just not all books.
Yeah. Oh, no, I totally get it. I was in a band. I don't know how it's like. I don't know how people, I haven't been fortunate enough yet to figure out how to, manage my time wisely. So I have a regular job. I was in a band for 12 years or something, a professional band, a band that made money. because I've been in plenty of other bands that made no money.
Yeah,
But
me too.
yeah, so you get it. So, but like I had to drop the band to do the job, and I still play music. I still got all my guitars and basses and stuff. I'm a bass player, by the way, so we're together.
Rhythm
Yep,
section.
and but like long story short, it's like it's hard finding that balance. So I like, how do you find balance with going from doing a TV show to writing a book to doing Copperworm or a band, or is it just kind of naturally flow? How does it work?
I suppose I cheat a
Okay.
little because I am more than the sum of my parts. I mean, I started off when I left, well, before I left school, I had my own music production company called Angel Heart Music. And that developed into a limited company called Legend Think Limited, which was a multimedia company. And I was managing director, ran that for 5 years. That went very well. And then we started an entertainment agency called Unicorn Entertainments. That ran actually in all for about 15, 20 years. So I've got all of that industry background as well.
Okay.
So I'm actually trained professionally in how to run a calendar, you know. So it does look like I'm just bumbling through this like a complete idiot, but that's kind of the way I like things to appear. But behind the scenes, there are, cogs turning, and everything does have a time and a season, and it kind of rolls along. So there are different levels of plans. Like obviously,
Sure.
the King Arthur book was a long-term plan. I mean, I made a cine film for a cine society back in 1977 based on that, called King Arthur: Seasons of the Mind. That triggered it off. Well, we worked out the other day. I mean, it's seen off goodness knows how many notebooks. It's seen off 7 laptops. It's seen off Amstrad computers, Word computers. Towers have disappeared under it. All different. It's just worked its way through every possible conceivable media to arrive where it is now.
Nice.
But the spin-off from that, which nobody really knows, is there is actually a television series written already based on that book. So there's a 5-part series, which I might go and chat to somebody about soon. And there's a movie script. There's a 163-page movie script. It took 3 years to write. That's a spin-off as well from it.
That's awesome.
And that went to some big producers, and it got some very, very good reviews, that script. Because when you create a script in movie parlance, it's referred to as a property. So when the script exists in its official form, you've created a property. And we have that. We have that for Arthur that exists. So one day it might get made.
I hope so. That would be awesome. I love stuff about King Arthur, and I especially love stuff like where you're going down like the real rabbit hole, versus like the legends and all this stuff. You're like, let's find this, like this. That's so much cooler.
Well, that's what the documentary would be aiming at, I think, because I'd want to go around and actually visit sites, do real archaeology, bring in technology and go search for things. It's kind of the Curse of Oak Island, but set in North Wales. That's kind of where it's going. That's how I'd like it to be. That's made by Prometheus as well. They do that as well.
Before that TV show started, I've been privy. I mean, and sure, you were too privy to what's been going on at Oak Island for feels like my whole life. Like that's a and they're so good at making that TV show that I'm sitting there watching it, and every time I'm like, oh, they find just enough.
Yeah.
To keep, I'll be back next season,
Oh yeah. What have we got this year? We've got a nail and we've got a piece of wood and something that looks like a coin. See you next time.
That's right. All right, and that's the whole season. See you next.
That's it. Yeah.
And the season's short because winter shows up really fast over there. So that's a whole crazy thing. When I first heard about that and like the money pit, when like the one guy died and then somebody went after him to go try to like save him, and it was like H2S gas, which I work around a lot, which is super deadly. Like that's like one of the things they train us in is to like, if you see your buddy go down and your H2S meter's going off, don't go after him.
Run.
Yeah Get out of there. It's crazy. Anyway, Oak Island, man. So what do you know about Oak Island?
Well, I mean, years ago I studied a lot of mystery books. We had a lot of them issued over here. We had Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. We had all sorts of things going on, on TV and stuff. And I kind of studied it then, so I was aware of the basic story of the pit and how they tried to get in there, and then the seawater came in, and like you say, the people who've died, I think at that point five people had died, and I think the threat is that eventually there'll be 7. I think now they're up to 6, so everybody's holding the breath. So that's another one of those
it's going to take
moments.
7 to get rid of the curse.
That's the one, the Curse of Oak Island. So yeah, and I mean, now the series that they're doing now is a brilliant one because they're dating things. They've got medieval remains, they've got earlier remains, they've got what looks like a ship in the swamp. They've got various tunnels, and bits of footage of things that they've drilled into and filmed. And it's if you actually took the whole series as a whole, then they're definitely cracking the mystery. They're getting in there. It's just a shame in the past that people made such a mess of the money pit. They were digging everywhere trying to get the stuff up, and they just ruined it. So it's just making it so difficult now to sort out what's going on.
People just came in there with bulldozers and just destroyed everything.
They just dug wherever, in the hope that they would get past the traps, but it doesn't work like that. Water finds its own level, so if you dig another hole somewhere else, it'll still fill up with water.
Do you think it's possible that maybe Oak Island was used for treasure, and then they made all these traps, made all this stuff, and then somebody came and either already got it, or somebody came and said nope, like the Knights Templar or something showed up and no, we got to move this, this is too obvious?
Well, I wouldn't say it was too obvious. I'm with you on the fact that I think it's definitely a treasure site. There's no doubt about that. The whole island has been used for possibly back as far as the Vikings or even earlier. It's been used for as a port of call. So it contains treasure, but whether it's like boxes of gold doubloons, and pirate stuff and all this, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about the Templar side of it, and I'm fairly convinced that there's nothing biblical on there. They're not going to suddenly drop into a chamber and voila, there's the Ark of the Covenant, like Indiana Jones. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to find that.
There's not going to be a knight sitting there waiting for you to choose.
No, choose the right cup. Choose wisely.
Choose wisely. And he was a carpenter.
That's it. It's the cup of a carpenter.
That was a great. I mean, that was great. That gave me all the feels. I felt all the feelings there. I was like, that's awesome. Dude, this is so great. This has been great talking with you, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
That's a pleasure.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I just learned about it yesterday, was revealing the Green Man.
Oh, now you're going back a bit. Yes, there are. Back a bit. Yeah, the books come in blocks of 3. So the first 3 were the Celtic Warrington and Other Mysteries, which are the regional books, if you like, for this area. That's what sparked off Lost Treasures as a TV series.
Awesome.
And there's a 4th one of those, which I can't do because the publisher passed away. But there is a 4th one in that series, which will come out eventually. The second block of 3 is The Disappearing Ninth Legion, The Life and Times of the Real Robin Hood.
Yeah, that was one of the ones I was going to ask.
Yeah, Revealing the Green Man. That's the second block. And that was done for a London publisher called John Hunt Publishing. So it's one of my they're only slightly older. They're early 2000s. That Green Man one was fabulous. I mean, I was going around doing it as a talk for years, probably 10 years or more, and doing it as a slide presentation. And I'd managed to get the Green Man all the way back to its origins, to where the whole cult of the Green Man began. And then I managed to get it back even further. I got it all the way back to Babylon. So it made sense to make a book out of it, which the publisher basically contacted me and said, we're hearing good things about this. Do you fancy tackling the Green Man? And I had another friend who's an artist, so he did a lot of the artwork for that book, including the cover.
Oh, cool.
Anthony Potts, his name is. So I'll give him a name check. He's one of the most amazing digital sort of Gothic pagan artists. He comes up with some incredible stuff. Unfortunately, we couldn't put the images in colour. I wish we could have done.
Oh yeah.
Because the colour images, apart from the cover, were stunning. But anyway, yeah, we did that, and it's the way I wrote it. I thought, well, archaeology books, usually you get bogged down with an archaeology book. Usually you end up, trying to wait for the punchline and that. So I went the opposite way, and it rattles through. It goes through at a million miles an hour. It's a real punchy, fast. There's like, the kind of the brain lights up every page. There's like a reveal, or there's a bright moment, all the way through the book. And it's been on the bestsellers on Amazon for quite a while. So
awesome.
It's doing all right. It is. It's a good book.
when you go through and you start the writing process for anything, like, because like I've written a book, I've written books, but I've never published them or anything. But and it's always taken me years, and
Yeah,
it's just kind of something to do. But like, when you're going through the writing process, what, how do you get inspired, first of all, like, and then how do you stay on course?
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a couple of stories because
Okay.
it's not it definitely isn't a one size fits all. It doesn't
Okay.
work like that. The first three books, the Celtic Warrington ones, I was professional. I was professional in the music business for 21 years, and eventually, um, physically, it just took a toll on my body because I
Yeah.
started playing drums when I was 3. So by the
Okay.
time I was 34, my spine finally started to give out. So I was incapacitated, couldn't do anything, stuck in bed, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't play. And I'd just come off tour. So, it was like 100 million miles an hour, we're going flat
Yeah.
out. And then all of a sudden, nothing,
Stop. Yeah.
dead stop. So I thought, what can I do? So I thought, do you know what? I've had it in mind to do something with archaeology for ages. So I'll have a go at a local history book. So I wrote the first book for fun. I'm
Okay.
stuck in
Yeah.
bed with nothing else to do, so I just wrote it for fun. And then another friend of mine who did local history, an older chap, saw it and he said, "My publisher would love that. You've got to get that into print." Well, by the time it reached the publisher, I'd already written number 2 and number 3 was on the way.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'd got a pretty good idea of where number 4 was going to go. So that one, if you like, the first 3 books were written because of illness. The
Okay.
next books, the next 3, the first one, The Disappearing Ninth Legion, was actually a reworking of a tiny book that a friend of mine had written. He'd done about 7,000 pages,
Okay.
which is why it's credited to me and to John Aspin, because he was an older friend of mine. He'd done this book on the Ninth Legion as a guidebook to York. And I just said to him, I said, look, there's more to this. There's so
Yeah.
much more, there's ghosts, there's archaeology, in fact, we've just finished doing it as a DVD. It's going to come out as a release fairly soon,
Nice.
which is awesome. It's a brilliant thing. So that'll be DVD number 6. Um, but it's an amazing story. So that was inspired by somebody else's booklet.
Yeah.
Then Robin Hood was just, there was a producer friend of mine and he said, do you want to do a documentary on Robin Hood? So I'm like, well, we'll have to write it before we film it.
Yeah.
That's where that book came from.
Okay.
Green Man was a request from a publisher. Like I say, he actually
Yeah.
contacted me and said, have you thought of doing this? And I was like, well, I have now.
Yeah.
Then funnily enough, the Crystal Skulls and Human Heads was another request, but it came round as an email because after lockdown, my original publisher, John Hunt, sent this circular around saying, look, end of the world, cataclysmic, pandemic, destruction,
Yeah.
death and chaos. Write me some books that'll sell. Do me some books on this subject that'll sell. So I thought, okay, I'll do Crystal Skulls and Human Heads because it's all about the extinction of different human races in the past. Anyway, I sent it to him, and then he sent me this message back, and he said, "I don't really get this book." I'm like, "But it's about human extinction,
Yeah.
post-pandemic. How can it not? Anyway, he just didn't get it at all. So I approached Philip with it, and Philip said, "Yeah, I'll have that. That's pretty good. I like the look of that. Crystal skulls, stretched alien type heads. There's even a last chapter on aliens I've thrown in. Just his cup of tea." So I said, "Yeah, I'll have that." Then, like
Yeah.
I said, the next one, the Arthur one, was like everyone ganging up on him and bullying him to put that out because, it's been sat there on one form or another for the last 40 odd years, 45 years. So that's a long term. I've got another one like that, by the way. I've got a biblical one that I'm
Oh,
working
cool.
on that impacts on the beliefs of the Gnostics and the Templars. And I've
Ooh.
got loads of stuff to do with the Templars, just so much stuff. I just want to blow that one wide open. So that's coming.
Cool.
And that's
I
been
can't wait
around.
for that.
Oh, that's been around a long time. That's been there as long as the Arthur book. And then the last one, the final one, I did the documentary, Europe's Roswell, on this
Yeah.
UFO crash back in 2008. And of course, good old Philip spotted it's 40 years since the crash. So then he literally contacted me and said, right, we've done one on archaeoscience. We've done one on King Arthur. Don't you think you could do one on flying saucers for me? Please.
Yeah.
This is what I publish. Please do one on flying saucers. So I'm like, all right, then go on. I think I will. So that's coming up. So we've got
That's
that
great.
coming up before
So
August, hopefully.
Europe's Roswell. That crash happened in 83.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
And I know because that's the year I was born. And so
Hey.
I'm 40. Yeah, all right. The but so tell me a little, just give me a little sneak peek of what happened in Europe's Roswell.
Okay, well, go one better than that. I mean, the documentary apparently is still knocking around. You can find it. So if you look up Europe's Roswell, it's online. You can actually watch
Okay.
that. It was Reality Films in the USA that put that one out. So it's out there. You can go and find it. But the gist of it is basically that some kind of flying craft hit a load of trees and cut this big channel out that was 25 foot wide. So we know roughly how big this vehicle was. And then it smashed like an egg, and all the pieces scattered over 4 fields.
Oh
Now in
wow.
Wales, that's pretty big. That's a lot of material to scatter
Yeah.
over 4 fields.
Yeah.
But when the farmer got up the next day and he found all this stuff, whatever it was that had hit the trees had flown off.
Yeah.
So he's looking at all this debris, thinking, where's it come from? What's it off? So he phones the local Air Force base. Next minute, you've got RAF, MOD
Right.
cleanup operation going, and they just turn up and clear everything. But the crux of the matter for me was there's another friend of mine called Gary Rowe, who's a UFO investigator, who this farmer also contacted and brought in. And he brought in his investigation team, and they thought, I bet they've not had a look in the woods. I bet they've not cleared all the debris out of the woods. And he
Yeah.
managed to get 6 pieces of this UFO debris out of the woods. So it was quite funny doing the documentary because we started at the end.
Yeah.
We'd already got these bits of UFO stuff,
Right.
which
Okay.
is it's like the holy grail of UFOs.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
we've got a piece of this one, and then we had to work backwards and try and find out where it had come from, and found out what had happened, and all the rest of it,
Wow.
which is the crux of the documentary. The documentary is mostly covering the pieces, the
Okay.
fragments towards the end. But again, the book's going to be the same. It's going to be very show and tell, and it's going to have all the content that the documentary had, plus a lot of extra bits that we picked up, and how the documentary was done, and a lot of other stories. There's a couple of my own stories in there, but mostly you get to see the debris. There's lots of
Oh,
photographs in the book
that's
of the
cool.
debris. So I mean, these people that collect UFO books, and they've got bookshelves full of them. This
Right.
is literally this is the last chapter. You can talk about them, photograph them, film them, analyze them. You can do all of that, but you need a piece of one.
Yeah.
That
That's right.
that's it. That's the holy grail. So I'm hoping this book will do very well when it's out. We're at the point now where we're just kind of tidying it up, ready for release. Knowing Philip, it'll be out in July.
It's already ready already. Let's go.
Well, he gets excited. He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, forget it. We'll put it out anyway." The King Arthur book was out in October last year, and the official release date was the 1st of February this year.
Wow.
So it was out for Christmas.
That's right.
Uh,
Man, that's so cool. I can't wait to get I'm definitely gonna get the King Arthur one. I can't wait for that. And when you were talking about the Gnostics thing,
oh yeah, I'm
I
working on that at the moment.
I
Yeah.
became so fascinated by the Gnostics. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I bought a bunch of books. I started understanding a little bit of how they wrote, and
Yeah.
like that sort of stuff makes sense. But like and then like Constantine didn't keep half the crap that was in the Bible, and like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you go
Well,
and you read those Gnostic texts, like Jesus is flying around like a superhero, so
yeah,
like, let's
he's
take that one out.
dematerializing and materializing somewhere
Yeah.
else, and he's doing all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to sort of explain all of that, I think, and make
Okay.
sense
Cool.
of it. And I mean, it was so much material coming out because I've followed it as a theme for so long. Academically speaking, now, especially with the internet and translations coming out of different things, there's tons of stuff,
Yeah.
tons that wasn't around when I started, doing this. Because you've got the whole of the Dead Sea Scrolls, whole of the Nag Hammadi library, you've got Old Testament Apocrypha, New Testament Apocrypha, individual Gospels.
Yeah.
Archaeologically, I mean, they've just recently found, I think it was last year, they found an inscription on Hezekiah's tunnel in Jerusalem, and it's scratched into the rock, which basically is the same bit about Hezekiah that you find in the Old Testament. So it's something like 750 BC. That's the oldest biblical inscription ever, and it matches. So there's things like that need, bringing out. People need to be told what the oldest stuff is and where they can find it, and what that means for us, And there's so much nonsense, I mean, I was chewing me knuckles off at, Da Vinci Code and
Oh
all
yeah.
that, Tomb of Christ, blood of the Savior, bloodline of Christ,
Yeah.
and I'm just, shaking my head in disbelief at some of this because I know where it's coming from, and
Yeah.
or not, as the case may be. I'm not going to say who it is, but there is one author out there. He's particularly famous for dealing with Grail material. So we're
Okay.
back with the King Arthur material again. And he annoys the hell out of me because he says things like, oh, the Jacobite princes of Bavaria have this in their private library, and I'm like, well, what's that to me? How can I go and check that?
Right.
He may as well have said that he'd made it up because there's no way of checking it.
Yeah.
And he's a beggar for doing it. And he's got some big, thick books, and they're
Yeah.
absolutely full of nonsense.
They're absolutely full of nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense out there, and I think that's as just your average consumer of things like this. That
Yeah.
if somebody writes it convincingly enough, you're just like, cool, all right, but you
Well,
don't know how to back it up.
you need to differentiate between theories. I mean, I'm not shooting theories. I'm not knocking theories because theories can lead to, proper conclusions at the end of the day. You can end up with archaeology backing it up. But a lot of it is just theories. And then because I am a Gnostic, I'm very like, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. I'm very
That's right.
matter of fact. That's basically what Gnostics are.
Yeah.
And I look at some of this stuff and I think, do you know what? It doesn't matter if somebody in 1700 AD wrote something down and said, well, my Jacobite ancestors, hid the Grail in wherever.
Yeah.
If there's a shipping receipt from like 1000 that says it went to Spain,
Right.
and then, you go back further and the Bible's telling you that the Romans took things, they stole things. And, by the time you get all the way back, you can piece together the story.
Absolutely.
But you have to go back to the beginning. And that's the key with the Arthur book. The older the sources, the more accurately you're likely to be able to reconstruct the story. So there's none. I mean, if you're a big fan of all the shiny knights in armor and rescuing Guinevere from dragons and all that nonsense, then don't buy the book. There's none of that. There's none of that in it. It's brutally realistic in parts.
You did talk about on another show. You talked about where where Camelot was, and you said it was Chester. Was it Chester?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the way you seemed like you were, it makes sense because it was like the biggest. Was it a Roman?
Oh yeah. That's the shoot. It's the duck thing. Actually, it's that coming into play again.
Yeah.
Because you've got the British Isles. I mean, we're an island.
Yeah. Right.
So it's only so big. You've got Land's End to John O'Groats. That's it. That's the British Isles. So if somebody's saying in the British Isles is Camelot, then the obvious thing to do is look for the biggest, strongest, badass candidate for Camelot that happens to still be there with all its buildings around about 500 AD. And guess what? There's Chester, and it's in absolutely the right place. It's exactly where the Welsh legends tell you Camelot is. So it's like, why would anybody go looking for it anywhere else? I mean, and it's 11 acres bigger than any other Roman fort ever built.
Wow.
So, go and have a look at Constantinople, go and have a look, in North Africa at the big forts over there, Germany, the Rhineland, you go wherever you like, you will not find one as big outside of Rome itself as this one. Okay. It's the biggest one. And it's got a massive palace. It's got an enormous elliptical building, which is the Tabliarum Rotundus, the round table. It's got the biggest military Principia with all the supply bases attached to it. It's got a giant amphitheatre, the biggest one in the UK, where the original British Christians were martyred. It's got a huge circuit of walls, most of which are still standing. It's just phenomenal. And the guy that really put me onto this is what makes me laugh. There's a chap who's been the city archaeologist now for just over 40 odd years. And when we were doing Lost Treasures, the TV series, he took me on one side and he said, look, you can't tell anybody where you got this information from because I'll lose my job. He said, but guess what? And then he just launched into this. He said, you need to get all my archaeological publications, he said, because the evidence is in there. He said, it's published, it's official, it's out there, proper academic material, which I did, dashed out and bought it all. Right. And there's some photographs of some of the stuff that's been found in the book, actually in the Arthurian book. But by the time you tot it all up and you look at where it was and what it was and all, there's just no other candidate. It's a complete no-brainer.
I love it. I love that. I think that's awesome. That's super cool. And I love that that there's literally evidence like right in front of your face.
Yeah,
This is it. This makes
yeah.
sense. This is the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they did. I mean, politically, the Normans kind of shifted the whole lot down south because they wanted to. So there was a definite conscientious attempt in medieval times to say, "Don't look at that. Go and look at this." And it's still going on now because in this country, the north and south are different. There's a divide between those two zones.
Okay.
And basically, the south wanted everything. They wanted everything down where London is. So you end up with Tintagel and Glastonbury and all this, that, and the other. But it's just not true because for the first 1,000 years, going from like 0 up to 1,000 AD, it was all up here. It was all up here in the north. So Robin Hood, the Ninth Legion, all those books that I've written are northern. They are. There's no doubt about it. In fact, it's referred to as the Hen Ogledd in Welsh, which means the Old North. So if you're into the Old North, this is where it is. If you watch the what's it called now? It's that series that's the Lost Kingdom. It's called the Lost Kingdom, and it's got Uhtred, the Saxon stroke Viking, in it. I think it's on Sky something or other. But if you watch that, it's all set up here, and it's historically accurate. It's Bernard Cornwell writing it, and he's brilliant. He does his research, spot on. So go and find that, the Lost Kingdom.
The Lost Kingdom. I'm writing
the Lost
down.
Kingdom.
It's. What do you think? This is totally off, but you said the word Saxon again. And what do you think about the band Saxon?
Oh, fantastic.
I know, right?
I used to know Biff Byford years ago, the lead singer, because I think it was, I think he's I think it was from Birmingham. Was it Brummie or somewhere? Or is it Sheffield? No, you're taxing my memory now. But I know his wife used to own a hairdresser, and he used to run the band's office out of the room over the hairdressers. But when you know the big hair that they used to have, Saxon, in the 80s when it was all perms and all that, it used to make me laugh that his wife was a hairdresser. But yeah, brilliant, absolutely superb band.
I love it. When I came over there, the two, I've only been on that side of the pond twice, 2009, 2011, both touring, but every club we hit, there's a Saxon poster, and it was a flyer because they play all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They've been off the road a bit sort of recently because they're all old. I mean, they're all old, but they do still tour. They do still go on tour, so you can come over here and see them again if you wish.
Yeah, I think that's great. I went to I was in Tilburg, and I went to 013 and ran into all the guys from Creator and watched just Creator like murder it, and then hung out with all the guys afterwards. And then me and all the guys from King's X were all drunk leaving, and I'll never forget because we left after hanging out with Creator. We've got our arms all wrapped around each other, like just walking down the street, a bunch of drunk Americans singing the Bee Gees tune. You can't tell by the way I do my work.
Oh yeah,
as loud as we can.
If you Google it, there's a heavy metal version of that out there. There's heavy metal Bee Gees. Yeah, it's a German band that have done it. It's absolutely phenomenal. There's one for the Bee Gees, and I think there's another one for ABBA. So if you go heavy metal ABBA or heavy metal Bee Gees, it's fantastic, absolutely phenomenal.
I love that.
Absolutely brilliant. I must say the band I'm in now, Wolf, the one that is a tribute to the 70s and the 80s, we do Wheels of Steel by Saxon. Cool. Yeah, we actually do it. The only snag is we don't know when to stop because it just goes on forever. But
just kind of look at each other.
Yeah, it's like, do you want to do another bit? Yeah, should we do another bit? Yeah, go on then. We'll do another bit.
Let's keep
go again.
That's cool. Where can I check out Wolf?
The only place that anybody's going to find anything, unfortunately, will be on my Facebook. Okay. The reason for that is that we did go with a site for downloads that now no longer operates. So one of the live gigs we did, which we put up, which was great, it vanished. But if you want to keep on top of what Wolf are doing as a band and get to see clips of us and all that sort of stuff, it'll be on Facebook. Everything just gets bombarded onto there. So go and check it out. Find me on Facebook, which I believe you did very recently.
I did yesterday.
Yeah, you are now a friend.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding me. I was driving home. I had a 7-hour drive to the house yesterday from where I was working, and it was great because I got to absorb all these podcasts and find out all these things. And you'd said on a podcast, just contact me on Messenger, and I was like, I pulled over, got some gas, and while I was getting gas, I typed in your name, bam.
There you go. There you
Friends.
go. Well, it's the only two places you can find me, as a rule, is Facebook and
Mhm.
Amazon. If you go to Amazon for buying stuff and then Facebook for just contacting me and keeping in touch. I like to keep it simple. I don't do thousands of different kinds of media. It's just not me. I wouldn't have the
Okay.
time anyway.
Right.
Back to an
right.
earlier conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, this has been fantastic. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself, because I certainly have. And I would love to have you on again. And I know we're going to see each other
Yeah.
again shortly on another expanding reality.
Yeah. He
I
has
think
plans.
he has plans. I think Sean's coming
Yeah.
back. We had
Yeah.
done one with Sean before. And I think Brandon didn't use it. I think he said something was wrong with somebody's audio, or maybe it was my audio. I don't remember, but it's okay because we'll get to redo it and it'll be great.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited. Everybody, this has been Mark Olly on the 13. I'm your host, Ryan 13. Thank you so much. We'll see you all again on the next one.
See you soon.